And here are the offerings we have at EAN, from our free weekly podcast to our Astro Library to our multimedia course. And here are a few more details on that Astro Library. You want any more information, you can always freeze your screen whenever you're listening to the recordings after these live events. Or you can go to our website and find this information as well. We are continually adding new audio and video to our Astro Library. We are even taking some, those of you who have been registered students with Evolutionary Astrology Network know that Kim Marie has done a live monthly audio class with her students for 10 years. We are taking a few of those selected audio files and putting them into various areas of this Astro Library so that the public can get a little bit of a taste of what we offer at EAN and my teaching style, I guess I'd call it. And of course, here's the multimedia course that we offer with our 3 different segments. And as I've been stating, in each one, after doing 10 years of audio classes once a month on segment 1, we have 250 hours of archived audios that any student of any course segment has access to. Starting January, I'm going to switch over to doing live monthly classes on segment 2. We're going to do them in this webinar format. We're going to start out working our way through the segment 2 homework and helping students in that area. So if you want to get started with your studies this fall, you can enroll in segment 2 and we will start looking at that wonderful area of relationships, both familial and relationship. All right, so Laura, if you'd like to switch the screen back, I'll start introducing Sewell while we are getting ready. And Sewell, welcome, honey.
Thank you.
So Sewell comes to us from the Northern Europe, and so I'd like her to tell us specifically where she's coming from. And Sewell, as you've seen some of the other presenters do, would you please give us some information on your background, your evolutionary astrology studies, etc. And so thank you, honey, and welcome. Oh, and Sewell's topic, as you can see from her screen, Pluto. We're just going to talk about the Pluto and Scorpio generation and transforming values. So take it away, Sewell.
Oh, thank you, Kim Marie. It's been a pleasure, and I must say it was very intuitive of you to put this webinar into organizing this conference into a webinar instead of having it in Denver this year, because
especially this
the
week.
Conditions. Yes. Wow, so dramatic. And I started with astrology when I was very young, and I think my father, he said to me, he was the one who introduced me, and he said once, you can never see the level of consciousness in a chart. And I was 16 about that time, and I kept remembering that phrase. And later on, I actually my first class was with Alan Oaken in esoteric astrology, and then I studied alone for a number of years until I took Maurice Fernandez's complete course, which I haven't done all my homework yet, but hopefully I will one day. But I work as an astrologer full time, and I organize. This year I did my first conference here in Norway. I write and I teach, and I keep exploring astrology and learning more things every day. Yes, so that's my background. I'm just going to put up my little screen here now, and the theme and the topic for today is Pluto, from darkness to light, and it's about transforming values. That's the bottom of it. And as I've been meditating on this theme, and especially the last week, it's been quite intense, actually. I mean, you don't delve into the depths of Scorpio and hope to come out of it unchanged. I think it was Erin Sullivan who wrote in her preface to her book, Saturn in Transit, that while she was writing the book, she was, exploring Saturn, and she had all these kind of Saturnian experiences, and she was like feeling it was such an intense experience. So, you know, meditating on astrological symbols really, it does something to you. And so this Pluto meditation that I've had, this, well, for quite a while now, it had resulted in a number of interesting dreams. And it will be nice to be done with this lecture so that I can go back to dreaming my normal Neptunian Mercury in Pisces, which is my Mercury placement dreams, which is more fluffy and nice, not the darkness of the Pluto dreams. And I've been going through some extreme experiences of abandonment and violence and drama and jealousy and loss, and it's just been so intense. And I'm inviting you down into the caves of Pluto and Hades and exploring one of the most fascinating generation that I've met. You know, I really and thoroughly, I sort of, you know, I value a lot that generation. I have family members myself in that generation, and they bring something really profound to the table. They bring something, me being a Pluto in Libra generation, is I'm a little bit in awe over their depth and their honesty and their, you know, you're not impressing me attitude. So as you can see, I will delve into some of the deeper recesses of human mind, the vampires and the darkness that resides in us all. And the Pluto in Scorpio generation are people are particularly here to open up that place in our psyche and release some of the knowledge that could be found there, not just about individuals, but about, you know, what we call the collective unconscious. And that's very important in order to heal the planet, in order to get some, you know, in order to connect with real power, true power. So, oh, that won't work. There we are. Who are they? Well, the Pluto in Scorpio generation are born between 1983 to 1984 up until 1996. There's some sub-generations here, and from September 84 to December 85, Saturn, Pluto, and the nodal axis are in Scorpio. So that's a very intense part of this generation. It sort of, they came in with a big bang. And in 85, Neptune enters Capricorn, and 89, Uranus enters Capricorn, and that's where it starts to separate. That's when you get two different sub-generations within this Pluto in Scorpio generation. And the 80s, you know, that's a very particular, I was a kid growing up back then, and here are some of the pictures that I remember when I was growing up. You know, this was, we all know who these people are, I think. Maybe that top picture there with the burnt down house is unfamiliar to you, but I will explain what it is. It's actually from Norway, and it says in a very funny writing there, Burzum. It's from the dark language of Mordor, actually, and it's a one-man black metal group, and the guy who called himself Burzum was in the mid 80s. He torched down some churches in Norway. He was called a Satanist. So we had this black energy moving in Norway. And Norway is a place where Sun is conjunct Pluto, that's the Norwegian chart, and we have Mars in Scorpio. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the suburbs and in the subterranean realms of Norway, of the Norwegian psyche. And that was brought up to full force in the 80s. I mean, one of the biggest things, one of the things that we export from Norway, except from oil, is actually black metal, which is a very deep and hard kind of hard rock. It's a music style. And you Probably some of you recognize this feller with the burnt face, the scarred face. In '84, the first film of Nightmares on Elm Street was released. Um, Elm Street, the movies were about, this man showing up in the dreams, and in people's dreams, and he had the power to kill you while you were asleep. It was terrible. I was forced to see these movies, and I can never see a horror movie again because I was traumatized for life by these movies. And that was a big hit. It wasn't the first time these movies came out, but then they came out, like, they had, I think, 6 of these movies, and it had many other equally terrifying movies at that time. So the '80s were, it was a time of these forces erupting, and I thoroughly enjoyed the generational talk that was given yesterday about the Pluto generations, how they relate to each other. I thought that was a very fascinating subject, and you know, from this experimentation of the '70s with the Pluto in Libra, you had all these sexual diseases, and the '80s we had the AIDS coming out as well. I didn't put this up here, but I did put up Madonna. She came out with her album Like a Virgin. Pluto was crossing her Neptune at that time, and she has a Neptune in Scorpio. And she's been an icon for many young women growing up at that time, but she was also a sign of the times, like I'm a woman, I can show my body if I want to. Um, she was taking the sexual freedom expression to the next level, and she was showing that you can be a powerful woman as well as a beautiful woman. And she was a very um, she was iconic in the '80s. And you have Margaret Thatcher. The '80s was a time for the yuppies, the yuppie revolution of the Wall Street. People were driving expensive cars, and you had deregulation of the banking industry, and you had Margaret Thatcher. Although she was elected in '79, she started some reformations in the '80s that still many people blame her for for a lot of the social injustice that we see in the UK today. And her death was celebrated in some circle. Some even came up with the expression, may she rust in peace. I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, she had a lot of opponents. She was a tough girl. And if you look at her charts in Porphyry or in Placidus, she has Pluto in the 8th house. And she has also Saturn in Scorpio on the ascendant. So she's definitely a part of that movement of re-empowering the economy. That was her mission, gaining strength, becoming even stronger. But the deregulation of the banking industry that happened, I think, more or less globally at that time, led to some of the most unhealthy developments that we see today, actually. And we see the karmic pattern. Saturn is now back in time in Scorpio, and we now see some of the karma related to that. It's been growing like a tumor, this profit-based economy, this greed-based economy. So we haven't resolved it yet. The '80s was also the glasnost, I think it's called, the transparency, it's called. The famous speech of Ronald Reagan when he says, Mr. Gorbachev, you have to tear down this wall. I can still remember that. And in November '89, it was decided that the wall should come down. That was actually when the sun was nearby that Pluto in Scorpio. So there were a lot of changes going on. It was the ages of power ballads, and the home computer came out. There was a big thing as well. So the fun fact about the '80s was that in '84, the first embryo was transplanted from one woman to another, resulting in a live birth. And also in '85, you had to put the population rates, they rose during the 80s. Therefore, although Pluto was only in Scorpio for 12 years, it's actually, it peaked the birth rate in the United States in the 1990s, in the beginning of it. So there was a lot of hot action going on, to say the least, and also in the animal world, where 5 lionesses had to be put on birth control because of the birth rate spun out of control, and suddenly they had like a big animal farm there with only lions in it. So that's the fun facts about the 80s. There was also a very, especially 84, 85 intense years, a lot of terrorism going on, a lot of death. The biggest airplane crash in history took place in 85, where 500 people got killed in a crash in Japan, and it was just, very intense. Yeah, an interesting thing about what happened, because the Burning Man was just finished, and Burning Man, it's very interesting. It started out in 86, the summer solstice of 86. There was a couple of friends who wanted to, he called it was a spontaneous and radical act of self-expression. And they burnt this big fire on a beach in, I think it was in Los Angeles or someplace, and it developed into the Burning Man. So um, you will see, I think, a lot of the participants today, the tribal consciousness, the Uranus in Sagittarius, people with Pluto in Scorpio, they're drawn um, to this scene, of spontaneous self-expression. And I think it's a very good symbol for the individuated phase of Pluto in Scorpio. And there are they put down some themes for some pointers for what the Burning Man should be or what it is. And I thought it was it sort of reflects the entire fixed cross and what it actually means. And especially it focuses on the polarity point of Scorpio, which is Taurus. And the first point is radical self-reliance. Burning Man encourages the individual to discover, exercise, and rely on his or her inner resources. Radical self-expression. Radical self-expression arises from the unique gifts of the individual. No other than the individual or a collaborating group can determine its content. It's offered as a gift to others. And here's the Leo. The first one was the Taurus. Leaving no trace. Our community respects the environment. We are committed to leaving no physical traces of our activities wherever we gather. This is also a part of, the Aquarian brotherhood mentality, and being a part of the creating of the society that we want. And participation, I think that was a very interesting point, because this is something that is often a wound in the Pluto in Scorpio generation, as we will see a little bit later. Our community is committed to radically participatory ethic. We believe that transformative change, whether in the individual or society, can occur only through the medium of deeply personal participation. Everyone is invited to work. Everyone is invited to play. That's the Leo. We make the world real through actions that open the heart. And that's the Leo as well. So you see the entire fixed cross here, and the transformative change, and the Burning Man, and the symbol of this, the symbol of the participating individual expressing their uniqueness. And that's really gaining power. That's empowerment when we think about it. So that's the goal, to achieve for the Pluto in Scorpio generation. And it's not an easy goal to achieve in our society today, especially thinking of the conditions under which they enter into society. It's the money and work, and life on planet is difficult. We all agree on that. It takes a lot of effort. We cannot get anything for free anymore. Everything costs. something, I mean, there's a price for everything, and everything can be bought, almost everything. And if you have money, you have a free pass to getting in everywhere. You can skip lines while you're ready to board a plane. You get special treatment in the bank, and you're being served, right? So wealth is important. And this generation is fed with wealth. They're bred on the rap industry and the wealth industry and the bling and the luxury items and symbols of powers that they've been more or less, since it's also a generation who's been brought up in when mass media and internet has been available. They've been exposed to a lot of brainwashing, actually, because that's what it is. It's propaganda, and it's a propaganda that's only here to make us good consumers. That's the primary goal of capitalism. So I mean, you're only worth something if you can consume something, if you can buy something. So and many of this generation, we have to split it up into, actually we have to split the Pluto and Scorpio generation into those who are not so fortunate and who has less money, and those who are born into the middle class, upper middle class, and who's been bred and fed and maybe also spoiled. I mean, I don't, there's a saying, "Don't spoil a Scorpio," and I know it's a little, I would say don't spoil anybody, but um, if you start taking things for granted, this is also a generation who has huge expectations to their work. It's not supposed to be just any work, it has to be fulfilling on a soul level. There's a desire to make something, yeah, something inspiring, something you're feeling emotionally invested in. So you cannot just you can't you have many of them wants to work in IT, in computer programming and music industry, and um, that they see the power of wealth and the power of money, and yet um, they come into they come of age when there's not so much work, and where everything is taken. So it's an interesting and uh, intense situation for a lot of these young people. um, Yesterday there was a little bit about the Y generation. It's the generation that comes after the X generation, which I think is kind of funny, because the X generation is, well, it's the X as in this is my ex, it's Pluto and Libra. I just recently divorced. And the Y generation comes in. Why did you divorce this? I mean, they have this try, a lot of them have this feeling that why? Why me? Why did this happen to me? And this intensity, this lack, this feeling of not being able to get what you want. There's not enough for everybody. So we tend to see the Y generation as, yesterday it was mentioned, the we generation. And yes, there's a lot of tolerance, and there's a lot of ability to bond. There's this generation has a huge tolerance for race and for different sexual preferences or natures, and they grew up in multinational and multicultural environments. They had all kinds of religions and races at their schools, so it's more natural for them, and they're more tolerant about sexual and everything, taboo. They have this understanding, and which perhaps the preceding generations lack. So yeah, in a way, it's a more tolerant and, to a certain degree, group-minded generation. But there's also a certain narcissism and a certain sense of entitlement to this generation, and this is, it's been researched. And whereas the Pluto and Leo generation was extremely concerned with politics and engaged in society and wanting to create something, that number of that percentage has steadily been on a downfall, as the generations evolved. And the Y generation, which is more or less the entire Pluto and Scorpio generations, shows less interest in politics. I'm not saying everybody, but there's less. There's also less interest in finding some sort of philosophical meaning. And this study has been um, going on since 75, and the age group has been the same all the time. So maybe when they grow older, they might evolve into being more engaged. But there is this trouble of um, making this. Some people think that are worried that this generation will be more self-absorbed or more introvert, and it's a yin sign. Scorpio is a yin sign. It's focused on the inner reality, so that might be one of the solutions. The other one is that they mature more slowly. Uh, they are now, for different reasons. I mean, the rituals that initiate them into adulthood are being postponed due to several reasons. I mean, one of them is obviously that they are, due to the financial situations, they are forced to live at home. So a lot of them stay home. It's comfortable home. You get what you get everything you need. So you don't have to reach for the polarity point of Taurus of becoming self-sufficient, or you can't reach the polarity point of Taurus and become self-sufficient. So because of the lack of work or whatever, so many children are forced to stay with their parents. And we recently had such a situation at our house because I have a niece. She's a Pluto in Scorpio, and her father is deceased, and she moved to my mother's in order to have her mother couldn't, provide for her because she was a student herself, and housing is extremely expensive in Norway. So she was forced to go to school in my hometown where my mother lives, and she she had this, my mother is a Pluto in Leo, and Michael Lutin once said that, well, Pluto and Scorpio people, they want to get to the bottom of everything, and then they want to kill the Pluto in Leo generation. And I had to say, I sort of laughed yesterday when I heard that, when she walked us through the friction between the Pluto in Leo and the Pluto in Scorpio generation. I mean, it's not easy to impress a person from a Pluto in Scorpio generation. They see through it, So it's the dynamics has been going on, they have been going on in my family as well. I see my mother, a Pluto in Leo, dealing with this young niece. She's 20, living in her house, feeding off her food, and not paying her respect. Just behaving like, just taking it for granted. And also, despising the fact that she had to be under the control of my mother, because my mother was actually paying for everything, giving her a free house and making sure that she had everything she needed. And that's not a healthy situation for Pluto in Scorpio. She will, sooner or later, it will evolve into some dramatic confrontation, and it did. And this big cataclysmic eruption, this change, it came, and it was of course unwanted, but it was totally necessary. And she it was so dramatic that she had to, lots of things happened, and now she lives in the far end of the country, and she has her own little house now, and she actually got a job. Getting a job, and the unemployment rates of Europe today is very, very bad, especially for young people. In Greece, it's 60% under 25 can't get work, and in Spain, it's half of the people under 25 can't get work, and they have big educations. They've been going to school because that's what they do today. They have school systems available, but they get educations for nothing. They just end up with a big, huge student loan and start off working at McDonald's with a medical degree or whatever. I mean, it's such an absurd situation, and it's the perfect scenario for the Pluto in Scorpio crisis. How to survive, how to be able to express my power, and to express my my gift, my uniqueness, and how to be able to participate in this society with who I am, and getting the opportunities that I want, so they go straight into this consciousness of lack. I have to, I'm trying so hard, but I'm still rejected. I get a no every time I try. And then changes occur, and sometimes like my niece, she had to move away from the city. She had to go far away, and simply be forced um, to feel the power of her will when it wasn't interrupted by somebody who enabled her to stay in this passive phase. And she had to get away from everybody who helped her, because she had to find that power within herself. And then everything just manifested. And a lot of the young people in Europe today are migrating across the borders, moving away from their homes, seeking employment in other countries. And so that's the situation for them for the time being. And it's not an easy situation. It's a situation that will bring them a lot of challenges. Yes. So, and on top of that, there's this addiction to luxury items because of um, um, the the constant feeling that we get from media, that you have to have this to be perfect or to be powerful, and you have to wear this to be one of us, or whatever it is. And whereas the Pluto and Libra generation more or less have the money to buy what they want. They got their good educations, and they got their lifestyles all right. They have the opportunities. That's not the case for the Pluto and Scorpio generation. It's not for all of them, and for a large number of them, they will, have to lower their expectations. A lot of them have been like the trophy kids with helicopter parents. A helicopter parent is like the archetypical Pluto in Virgo parent, and a lot of the Pluto in Scorpio are actually bred by Pluto in Virgo generation. It's their offspring. And the Pluto in Virgo generation, uh, very hardworking, very efficient, very, works a lot. And I remember a mother, she was a little bit, she was in despair because her daughter um, couldn't, she couldn't make it. She didn't manage to finish her schoolwork, and the pressure was too much. And the daughter was a Scorpio with Pluto conjunct the Sun. And she came for a couple of sessions with me, and I said, we explored her chart, and she said, I just want to be something that I can earn a lot of money on, and then I can have this comfortable lifestyle, and I don't have to do anything, and I can write a book and stay in New York. But I don't want to I don't want to go the entire way. I just want to have, like they just want to have the gains. She didn't have the energy to put in the effort. And I asked her why, because I saw my mother almost kill herself working. And that was so profound. She said that it's actually not worth it. It's not giving it anything of real value. I still want the easy lifestyle, but I'm not willing to work for it. It's, like she had this massive crisis in her psyche that, uh, she couldn't find the willpower to get out of bed, or um, to do what she was supposed to do, and she kept spending her energy completely wrong, spending her power completely wrong, focusing on lack all the time. So this is one of the backdraws. This is one of the the traps we can all fall into, of course. But um, for her, it was a full-fledged crisis. She was experiencing a lot of emotional turmoil because of that. And yeah, they're not always so nice. This is probably part of consensus. You can see these strange people on the screen here, and as you see the shoes and the phone, it's from a blog. It's from a fashion blog. they're big on blogging, that's for sure, and it's fashionable items, and it's, you know, that's the one of the trends. It's I'm wearing this today, and I this costs that and this, and it's look, I'm with this powerful group now. We're going on a Marc Jacobs show or whatever, you know, and that's the focus. It's luxury items, and you can also see the two girls there with the bunny ears. Um, came from one of the blogs actually, and as you can see, the spray tan wasn't that successful. But and the boobs, I think they got them for their, you know, when they're 14, they celebrate growing up. It's a ritual we have in Norway. It's a Christian ritual. It's called the confirmation, and and many people actually, many this generation, they were the first generation to actually get boobs for this, you know, like fake boobs for this ritual. And it's more or less like the consensus. Um, it's not widely spread, but it's it's definitely a lot of it. And a very strong focus on appearances, on looks, and a lot of tanning, and a lot of eyebrows and tits and fitness, and they do a lot to get the sexual power, because sexual power equals opportunity, and opportunity is a part of the Scorpio archetype that is, you know, why have power, why have money? It's because you become free. You are free to go to the next stage, the Sagittarius. You can travel the world, you can explore and expand. So that's why. And there are also, I'm a little embarrassed to actually say this, but I got drawn into this Gossip Girl thing because I have Netflix on my computer. And this summer, while I was preparing for this, a little bit starting out with preparation for this lecture, I got sucked into this one. I thought, oh, let's see one episode, and then, oh my God, I got to see another one, and then this thing goes on, and of course I explored the charts of every person that is present here, and everyone, and the people that you see here, every one of them have Pluto in Scorpio. And it's not like Falcon Crest or the Dynasty. When I grew up, we had Falcon Crest and Dynasty, and people were millionaires. You know, these people are billionaires. They're like super rich. It's the Upper East Side, and it's like it's so much money. It's no problem. When you have so much money, you can buy, you have like total freedom, and that's what they promote to their public, you know, the audience to this show is the Pluto in Scorpio generation. And again, not everybody, but parts of this generation is being bred on this, and it's kind of vulgar. And the funny thing about this one, I thought, was that I couldn't see so much before I was totally saturated and had to do something else because it's so destructive. And the bottom line is nobody's honest, which is kind of the bottom line in any soap opera. And but they are complicated human beings, and this lack of honesty that leads to this intense drama where they are being rejected by each other all the time, and everybody's switching partners and having sex with each other. And the good guys, when they get money, they turn bad, and when the bad guys, you know, um, they morph into some good guy energy after a while. So I found kind of fascinating, because that points us to a very important feature of the Pluto in Scorpio mentality, or awareness, I would say, and that is, in us, in every human being, there's both good and bad. We are all corrupted by desires from time to time, and we can all be evil with each other. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be honest. And so it's sort of, I think the appeal lies in this, that, you know, these people, characters, are moving from being extremely scheming and evil towards each other to becoming very sweet and with lots of empathy in the next minute. And it's a little bit how I see, you know, I used to watch my niece grow up, and I thought, oh my God, they're so hard on each other. Why do they call each other these names like bitch, you're a slut, and They have all kinds of way to put each other down. And the teasing went from teasing to violence. There was a lot of trouble with violence in schools. With this is a generation that you can't control, and especially when you get into the Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn uh, generation, because they have no. Many of them have no respect for authority, and maybe rightly so. They're keenly aware of this double standards. And who are you to tell me? The Pluto and Scorpio generation are very stubborn. They won't just give in to everything. They're not as easily as impressed as the Pluto in Libra generation, who's always there to, you know, be pleasing to others. Uh, so they are more. They won't chit chat with you unless they feel inspired to do it, and they won't tell you anything unless they really think it's truthful. They can be manipulative, of course, but they won't say anything unless they really mean it. Honesty is a very fine feature for the Scorpio, but they will shut up when they can't say anything nice, or they will just simply say what the not so nice thing to say. So they won't be nice to you, uh, um, because they are more self-contained, as was mentioned yesterday. Um, so instead of being open, they can be psychically, just psychic, just dampening, being moody and dampening the room, sending out these energies that makes everybody just tiptoe a little bit. Silent treatment, that's what we call it, right? But the Gossip Girl was a big thing, and for this generation, and I think it's an expression of that luxury thing, and also the need for emotional intensity and drama and deep bonding. All right, so let's go back in time. Life on Earth is not an easy place, and I often think of, when I read history, I think of, wow, that's intense. Oh my God, how many people died in World War II? It was at least almost 28 million Russian people, and so many people died, and people have been dying en masse during the ages. I mean, we've been killed and robbed and stabbed to death and burnt on stakes and hanged, and we died in plagues, and with famine, and there's been so much. So of course some of that is stored in our psyche, and when you see Pluto in Scorpio generation, there's definitely an intensity to that generation. You have they come in with these strong desires, and I often think of, sometimes people, they live and live and live because they have this strong desire. They have bonded with something on earth so strongly that they can't release yet, so they hold on to it. It could be a conflict, it could be inheritance, it could be money that keep them on, connected to the material realm. But these strong desires, they keep pulls us into reincarnation again, where we have the equally strong desire to manifest the exact same situation, um, the security that you find in that situation. So there's a lot of desire in this placement. I need consciousness. I need this. I need that. It's not like the Neptunian personality, who is more or less floating in between different states of consciousness, and a little bit impersonal about everything, and doesn't want to bond with life because it's so demanding and stay out of trouble. The Pluto, the Scorpio energy, it goes right into it. They bond strongly. They want to create some lasting bond. They want to bond with the material realm. So they make a commitment, and it's very necessary in order to make things work. You also have the magician very strongly represented in this archetype. The magician, Harry Potter was also a thing for this generation. Harry Potter came out. I remember I read the books for my niece, and later on she saw all the movies, of course. And it's not something, I mean, the Pluto in Sagittarius generation has been equally fascinated by this, naturally. And something that lives in all of us, I think. But the magician, the emo, the thing, you see the picture there, it's an artwork, and it's um, the dark magician, the black magic in a way. And magic is something it's been practiced in secret societies, and people have been wanting to gain powers. You know, that's what magic does to us. It makes us gain powers, superpowers. We want to be super strong, stronger than our neighbors. We want to be safe. We won't be eliminated in that way. So it's natural to think that, you know, we seek magic in order to become strong. But the black magician, the ones who does it for their egoistic purposes, will find themselves in the situations where it's all corrupted, and where it's sometimes also goes wrong, you know, where you're just left with the strong desire. And that's a little further down, you see the power and loss of power. It's the cycle of powers and then losing powers again, and gaining power and then losing it. So, you know, you have the sense of loss deeply embedded in the psyche. Also the same thing with the violent romantics. This generation is violently romantic. My niece wanted to marry 3 times, and every boyfriend she had, she wanted to marry him. Of course I'm marrying him. What do you think, you know? Why would I be with him if not? That's her response when I said, are you sure? I mean, how long did you date him? And she was totally appalled by my question. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a month. And a month later, of course, I was right. She's still young. And then you have the war trauma. And it's just massive. You know, I just went through a little bit of world history, and it's a lot of fighting. It's a lot of wounds. It's a lot of blood. And the war trauma is big. In Norway, I told you earlier that Norway is a Pluto country in many ways. It's a Sun-Pluto conjunction, and we have this Mars in Scorpio lurking underneath all that mutable energy that is Norway's chart. And it erupted into this Utøya catastrophe that we had in July 2011. And 90% of the people who got killed in that massacre, I don't know how many people it was all in all, I think it was about 75, 80 people. And that's a lot for a small country like ours. And I think I went through all the charts because it just happened so that all the dates were public, went public, and I had to put up every chart and pay my respect in that ways. That was the thing that I could do. And so many of them had Pluto in Scorpio. It was a youth camp for the Social Movement Party in Norway, and they celebrated their youth movement annually. They are retreating on this island. It's actually shaped as a little heart, and it lies outside of Oslo. And due to the Socialist Party being very friendly towards immigration and has a very friendly immigration politics, it's been opposed violently by more blue brown forces coming. And this man who killed them all, he was one of these reincarnated Nazi kind of guys, and he just simply killed them all. And we couldn't believe it. It was just a terrible thing to do. And what I got was this flash. I thought these people had to have some connection to World War II and all this brown energy coming up from the underground, the fascism. And we will hear Michelle Davison have this talk about Pluto and Saturn in mutual reception in Capricorn and Scorpio during this conference. And although this is only isolated Pluto in Scorpio we're debating right now, I also feel that, you know, it has some relation to Nazism, the Nazis. A lot of the people in Hitler's, you know, gang was either Scorpios or had some or Capricorns or had both of them involved in their charts. So it's definitely related to that energy of, you know, Scorpio is also a sign of purification, although it's not like the elitism of Aquarius, but it's also a sign of eliminating something. So it can easily become the ones that tries to kill somebody else because we don't like them, you know, they don't belong here. Um, there was somebody proposing, oh, the Pluto and Scorpio generation, they are the mass murderers. But you know, it's not like that. It's not that you can generalize like that. But definitely, when it gets distorted and destroyed and traumatized and obsessed, it can definitely lead to some violence and killings. Yes. And I remember this dream that I had, yeah, indeed. And sometimes when you feel utterly powerless towards something, you feel this incredible sense of powerlessness. The only thing you can do is actually, you know, it's this feeling that whatever I do, I can't change this person, so I have to use violence, for instance. So it's actually an expression of powerlessness,
Sewell,
pulling out the gun. Yes,
Leroy here. Can I ask you a quick question?
of course.
As I'm listening to your talk, of course, you're raising a niece, Pluto and Scorpio niece, and having issues with, the grandparent, of course, the Pluto and Leo grandmother.
Hmm.
Kim Marie and I, of course, are parenting a Pluto and Scorpio teenager in a very similar way. Where there's always seems to be this it's more than electrical, but an undercurrent of power struggles. That's not things being left unsaid, not being said. Escapism into our dark corners and not being direct. And this has been the history of my relationship with my son, and being
Hmm.
that Pluto and Leo father. I'm
Hmm.
just wondering if you've integrated any guideposts in dealing with this generation that can
No.
help with
We'll
this
figure that one out.
the undercurrent
Uh,
of the power struggles all the time.
yeah, yeah. Yes. Well, that's an interesting question, though. I mean, yeah, what I thought was very interesting because of their stubbornness and their resistance to grow. It's, you know, the first stage of any healing is total denial, and the resistance towards, you know, growth. It's like, I mean, they won't grow, and it's such a strong ability to resist anything that comes from the outside. I don't trust it. You know, I don't trust this information, and I don't want it. You know,
Hmm.
and
That's what I have
I'm,
a difficult time with is
I
wanting
can
to help,
imagine.
not knowing how to help, where you almost then go
Yeah.
back and move step way back and don't even tell them, don't even fix them any food, for God's sakes,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they
exactly.
they got their own special
So
diet.
yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, sometimes you got to be brutally hard. You know, you just have to put down some uh, because it's like a push-pull thing. I mean, this generation are experts in the push-pull thing. You know, it's rejection
Uh-huh.
and it's like, so you
Yeah.
just don't have to feed that game. I mean, for me, I mean, just sow the seeds. All you can do is sow a seed and let go. I mean, it's just let go. I mean, because it would be like banging your head against the wall. and eventually it will merge and it will sink in. I mean, they are not, these are very, uh, they need somebody who can talk their language, and they won't trust anybody who doesn't, you know. So um, they will have to go down some kind of spiral, actually, you know, before
Mm.
they can re-emerge again.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe they need to reach the bottom, you know, before they can rise again. And so I think letting go is part of not being playing that push and pull game, and simply just demand, just, you know, I think also, you know, one of the efficient way of working with people who won't listen to you is just actually just expecting them to do it. You know, you can do that. You can. All right. Okay. So do it. You know, and 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 it's a positive kind of expectation instead of you won't do that. I mean, going in and clean the
Yeah,
room and with the attitude, I know you won't do it anyway, so clean the room. You know,
I felt
and
that one. Yeah,
instead,
I get the
yeah,
difference. Yeah,
and it's very frustrating because you as a Pluto Leo person, you know, you need to feel that ability to create something. You want to create your son, right? You want to infuse him with purpose, and maybe you see that he grows up in uh, this culture where there's not so much hope, right? It's not a very sanguine, how do you say that,
mm.
it's not a very
Hmm.
happy generation.
Yeah,
It's they're more brooding, it's more serious, you know. Don't You can't play a joke, you know. You can joke with me on any subject almost, but my niece, I mean, you can't pull a joke on her if she's not in the mood for it, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I just have to let her go. You know, I don't spend energy on her. She can totally suck that out of me if I do.
yeah.
So,
That's
but
what.
I tell her the truth brutally. I can be brutally honest with her, you know, and I won't go into the manipulation thing because she, she will totally go after me afterwards. You know, she was like, "But you're like this and that," and the manipulation is how to uh, get the focus away from their problem, and just by focusing on one of your problems instead.
Yeah.
So that's how okay, so then they don't have to confront their problem.
Hmm.
And not biting that bait, I think, needs a lot of
Mm.
control of the solar plexus, because it's the center where the nervous system is situated, and you feel it in your stomach, you know, like you get defensive back again because of this instinctual, you know, when the Scorpio stings, it's poisonous. So
Hmm.
it's easily, you know, they hurt, and they hurt severely as well when they go into defensive mode. But don't
Here,
bite the bait. Yeah.
here's a comment. Here's a
Yeah.
comment from someone, one of the attendees. I'll just read it for them. If there are any hidden motivations or agendas with the parent, the Pluto and Scorpio generation will instinctively sense it and resist it for self-preservation. I think the key is to be 100% transparent in order to make them feel safe. They deal better with blatant truth than with soft, gentle half-truths.
Exactly. That's
Oh,
a good point.
that's what's it. Well,
Mm,
Sul, with your permission, I guess this would be a good segue as well to launch our poll. If you don't
sure.
mind taking a breath and having a drink
Yeah,
of
yeah.
water. Here you go, everybody. How many Pluto and Scorpio children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews are you aware of in your life? And this will give all of our attendees kind of a chance to interact, kind of do a scan through the charts that they've constructed if you're a practicing astrologer on this call. And, it's fascinating perspective. And it's, as I release my own judgments about some of the behaviors, um, I realize how much power resides in this generation.
Yeah, and while Sue gets a break and we're just doing the poll, we not only have our little Pluto in Scorpio who has Sun in Scorpio. I have a niece and two nephews who are also Pluto Scorpio. So we go from the very beginning to the very end of that generation.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of more nieces and nephews that are coming through. So we seem to be immersed in this generational souls. And boy, talk about that. They're either powerless or lots of power.
Mm,
Our son and a nephew, they're on the I've got the power side and don't you dare take it away. And it can get pretty intense in our household because I'm Sun, Moon, Scorpio, 8th house Pluto. Leroy has Moon in Scorpio,
And
and then a
Saturn.
Pluto and Saturn, and then this little Scorpio soul. And boy, it can be the three of us, degenerating into the power struggles,
mm,
and get a little intense. And I think we've slowly been working through it a little bit. Hold on a second. I got another comment coming through from somebody. I had a client offered help. She left. I offered again. She would not respond. I learned not to rescue them. Eventually
mm,
she returned, but she had to fall first.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me goosebumps. Definitely, there is some trust issues here, and we see that.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to continue now. Is that okay?
Sure.
Leroy, give the poll results.
Yeah, we did. Basically, it was all
Oh,
over the
I'm sorry.
board. I shared the
All right.
results with those that had their screen on, but 14%, 20 or
No worry.
more Scorpio
That's,
generation.
that's
But yeah,
I
the
was
results
I
have
was
been shared.
yeah. I was running Q&A. Got about a half hour still, okay?
Excuse me? I didn't hear that last.
We have about 30 minutes left.
Yeah,
You,
that I
you,
just
you
saw
have
that.
one.
I'm not even halfway. I have to talk faster. But yeah. All right. So these people, they have like the deep unconscious. That's their realm. So especially when there's a lot of energy locked into this place, you get a lot of compulsions. The trauma that they come with creates a lot of um, emotional patterns that they can't control themselves. So they need to reach for the depth before they can rise again. And a lot of the dark side of the moon, not solving the issues, I have a quote there: all cruelty stems from weakness. So when you're cruel to yourself, or you're cruel to another, I mean, these people took self-destruction to the next level. They've not only, eating disorders and trouble with their bodies, and they've been hurting themselves, like, cutting themselves up. It's so the destruction in this generation, it's a huge rate for suicides as well. There are a lot of them who, and I think Mark Jones actually wrote that in his book on Pluto, that they are even willing to give up their Taurus polarity point, the self-sustainment. I can't sustain, the biological survival instinct. So a lot of suicides and self-destruction occurs. We were talking a little bit about the manipulation and how that's a way to distract away from the real problem, and also a complete lack of trust, the Armageddon frame of mind. And evidently, if people have gone through a lot of trauma in earlier lives, how can they ever think that it's going to work out in this life? I mean, it's kind of obvious. And then you have the feeling of constant lack. Here's a chart of a girl who has this constant lack mind frame. Her problem was the constant lack of family. She had a constant lack of emotional support in her family. There was none. And there was a lack of good relationships in her life. She thought she would never find the right one. She had huge expectations of who he should be. I mean, this is also called the marriage generation. They marry quite early, and some of them do, yeah. They're they get children early. They have this instinct to reproduce. But this woman couldn't find a partner. I mean, she has a very strong individual signature there with Sun, Mars, and Mercury, and strong Moon in Leo, and her family background didn't exactly give her the positive feminine role model that she needed. She was living with a mother who was being abused by numerous men, and also you see Pluto in the fourth house. There's some Pluto stuff going on in her upbringing, and there's also this incredible need to have emotional support, and there's none given. So she had to go the hard way of finding it within herself before she can have a good relationship. And the reading was more or less, when I gave her a reading, it was more or less, we came back to, you have to trust again. You have to trust in order to have a good relationship. You have to win over your traumas. So how do you do that? It's not an easy thing to do. How do you get the magnet to function properly and permanently? I've been going through Maurice's classes, and he presents us with the Pluto phases. Like there are different phases too. There's an evolution in every planetary archetype, and it starts from the most unconscious till it blossoms in the most conscious aspects of itself. And for Pluto, it's first of all, you have this lack mentality, the hunger, and it's the first phase is about identifying the lack and weakness within the personal psyche, feeling the hunger and identifying it. I need this. Okay, so you need this, so you seek union with this symbol. If you need to learn to play guitar, you get a guitar teacher, or you get a boyfriend who's a great guitarist, and you learn from them. You merge with this power. But also being addicted to these, it's kind of difficult, because you can go into addiction of these external feeders all the time. You feed me, and you can get some power, but then a part of having power is keeping power. And how do you do that without taking it for granted or going into corruption? So the solution is merging with a power within, the magnetic soul. And it's returning to the source, as Jeffrey often writes about, and connecting to a source within yourself as well, and which is the Pluto in Taurus polarity point. And then you get a new sense of power. So, if you gain power, you fall from power if you don't treat it well, and then you have to reconnect again and learn that life is about losing power and finding power, and losing power and finding power. You will have bad days, you will have good days. You won't be powerful every day. Your body grows old. You won't have the power of youth anymore. You have to redefine every time, every day, what is power, where's the new power within you. And then you learn that you always have to live with change, and that's when you gain true power. So what power does to us, here's Mr. Justin Bieber, who's kind of I think he's an interesting thing. It's a little ironic. He's gained a lot of power. He's a Pluto in Scorpio generation, and he gained a lot of power in a short time span. And he's been acting out kind of badly lately. I mean, I see him sometimes on the headlines of our newspapers, and he's been doing all kinds of stuff towards journalists and I don't know what. But it often made me think of that Pluto third phase where you gain power, and then it's corrupting you. So recent neurological studies, this is from a recent study on the mirror system of the brain, which is what makes us emphatic and makes us feel empathy. And the balance of the literature suggests that people in positions of power tend to act in a self-interested manner and display reduced interpersonal sensitivity to their powerless counterparts. In other words, you will drive like an egomaniac if you have a big car, but if you have a small car, a little less expensive car, you will drive more humbly. So that's, it's actually studied what it does to the neurology of the brain. And I thought it was an interesting pointer because of, it's a challenge to stay in power. You will see people who manage to stay in power without get corrupted by it. These are humble people. These are really strong people. They manage to not be influenced by it. They don't identify with that power. They use it for the service of everybody. So the Pluto in Scorpio, is also something that will express itself on different levels. We saw some of the Plutoian consensus levels where you just merge with the power of symbols prevalent in culture today. You have the rap and the gangs and the violence and everything, you know, the tattooing thing. You go into the tattoo store and you get a big symbol showing that, yeah, I'm unique, but then you realize everybody else got it, so you're not that cool, special anyway. So, and tattooing is a Scorpio thing. But you will also see, I mean, really cred to this. I have to give a little cred to the generation as well. They will also bring in this consensus. They will also bridge down the gay rights, the racial, you know, indifferences. They will be more tolerant, and these values will become consensus. And individuating, they will break free from the structures that inhibit personal growth and restricting their power. And we will see that in a chart. Hopefully I get through it later on, where we have Rihanna, because she's, you know, she's exploring the sexual taboos and the shame that is being still prevalent in our society today. And it's very interesting because this generation as well, they are wanting to be so free, but they're not so free as they would want to be. So the individuated um, part of this generation will definitely seek out to also destroy a lot of the consensus power symbols. You know, like, it doesn't matter what your purse is worth, you know, I don't care about your, you know, the size of your boobs. I want to see the beauty within. So they will also be repelled by some of the symbols that the consensus will flood themselves in. The spiritual will reconnect with the soul, its liberation from the separating desires. I thought this was an interesting point because esoteric and evolutionary astrology has a lot of things in common. Especially when it's related to the outer planets. And Pluto in Scorpio, Scorpio is related, Pluto is related to the first ray of destruction. It destroys everything that stands in the way of the soul and the personality. So in Scorpio, it's the battleground. It's the battle between the soul and the personality. And the transcendence, it comes in the form, the process of detachment from material desires. This is spiritual level, Pluto in Scorpio. Now that's a highly advanced level, so I don't know. So how do you deal with it? I mean, we have a lot of issues coming from the insides. We all feel that, you know, these demons, they haunt us from time to time. We have greed, we have sexual instincts, we have the thirst for power, we have cruelty, we have all kinds of states of mind, you know, like jealousy and revenge and these deep instinctual urges that comes from our subconscious. And in the labors of Hercules, you have the second labor that he mounts. It's slaying the Hydra, the water snake. Um, um, and whenever he tries to kill it, the Hydra was a snake with 9 heads, all representing different aspects of our desire nature that corrupts us. And this is a hero, you know, he's trying to find something within himself in order to kill this, face this Hydra and slay the heads. And whenever he does that with brute force, it's like whenever you suppress the sexual instinct, for instance, it will only grow stronger. It will only bite you. You know, it will only erupt into madness after a while. We've seen that deterioration in the Catholic Church, where you have all kinds of priests, you know, celibate priests raping their choir boys. And so it doesn't work, and we know that. So how do you slay that? And whenever he cut one of the Hydra's heads off, 2 new came out. So it just grew stronger. And what he does eventually is that he's reaching for the light. He takes the flames. His nephew helps him, and he takes the flames and he burns the heads off. Like, he uses flame, the symbol for the Holy Spirit. You know, he reaches for the transcendence. So the the solution is not to forcefully try to be somebody you're not. You just have to go through it. You have to be at the bottom and at the top as at the same time. You have to accept that you have these desires and not try to fight them, because they will just, it's like being, if you're, it will just make them stronger. But if you let them live freely within you, it will corrupt you and destroy your life eventually. And the sexuality is part of that, and we will see that in a minute. Also, you have a vampire. Now, this is an interesting thing, because that's also a battle of the soul and personality, where the instincts are being freed. And the drinking of the blood, when all energy is locked up in the subconscious, there is no life force left. The human who has locked everything up inside of themselves, repressed everything, have to feed on the energy of others. Those who can't feel their center have to feed on others. So the vampire mythology comes in here. I would love to tell you so much interesting about the vampire mythology, but there's no time for that. I really want to make all my points here. But the point is, the vampire is highly attractive to this Scorpio generation, and they're being drawn to it mostly because of the superpowers. But I'm also wondering if it has something to do with, the magnetic attraction, that the sexual allure that a lot of these vampires carry. They are very seductive creatures. And interestingly, the word vampire came out in 1945 when Pluto was in Scorpio, and the guy who wrote the book that popularized everything was Bram Stoker, and he was a Scorpio. So there's a lot of Scorpio in this vampire energy. And then you have the Twilight fad, and I thought that was an interesting Scorpio symbol, because it's different from the regular. I mean, it's been morphing. The Scorpio myth is old. It's from ancient Babylonia, and Greek literature also have a lot of these demons. Actually, you will but it's been morphing into this vampire story that we have today, and it's all about these the realm of the dead, because they're the undead. They are immortals. They cannot die, and in that way they have transcended death and life, but they're stuck in limbo between the worlds as well, and they have to feed off life force of human beings in order to not go crazy. But the vampire in Twilight, he's a vegan in a way for a vampire, and he feeds only on deer, and that's a vegetarian vampire, and he falls in love with this mortal being, and he's like this transcendent kind of vampire. He's lifted up to a symbol that you can actually transcend these instincts, these bloodthirsty instincts. You don't have to feed on others. So I thought that was an interesting symbol, because it's been very popular for this generation. And they actually were a couple. They had this eternal love going on, and the violent romantics of the Pluto and Scorpio generation were infatuated by their magnetic attraction. But I will just go to the double wheel here, and you will see that there's not much going on in this chart. So she eventually ended up abandoning him, and he's a moon in Cancer, as you can see, and their only true connection is here. And there's some nodal action going on with Pluto there, but the only connection is here with Chiron and the moon, and Chiron on her ascendant. So it's a Chiron kind of connection, and that can be very enticing in the beginning and a little bit annoying in the end. It's like, okay, I'm ready healing you now. And he often felt that she gave him the confidence. She's an Aries, and he's a very nervous kind of Taurus. That's the way he explains himself. He has a troubled mind. He has a Mercury-Pluto opposition, and he's constantly aware of his lacks. And he said, I am so aware of my lacks that I can really never develop a healthy ego. I cannot take off my shirt. I hate my body. He has this distorted view of his body, and he felt he got a lot of energy from her, and I guess she was fed up by that. Eventually, she reacted in an instinctual way and was unfaithful to him. And it was ironic because they were the couple that were supposed to be together to eternity. They would never leave each other. Yes, so sexuality, which is also part of the vampire fad, they are highly sexual beings. And you have the purity complex versus the sluts. Nobody, you can be sexual, but don't be too sexual because then you're a slut. That's, oh, she's such a bitch. These people actually are so brutal when they describe each other. If they see right through you, into your motivations. If a woman uses sexuality for the wrong reasons, she's a bitch. That's the words they use. And on one side of the polarity, you have the cult of virginity, where you have people like, I don't want to play that game. I want to save myself for the one love, and it ends up being not what they expected it to be. Or they have the other part of it. It's empowered porn, where you have people going into the porn industry and actually saying, "Oh yeah, I love it," and I love being abused. I love being, used in that way. I love being, and it, it's an illusion, both of it. You have friends with benefits. Why not? Sex is cool. It's great. You have the rape and the gangster style, and there's so much rape going on in this. And it's not the kind of rape that's reported because it's friends with benefits, right? So it's blurry lines. That's the new hit for this generation. Blurry lines. I don't know where the lines are. You said yes. I mean, your body says yes. Why should I care if you say no? I mean, sometimes the magnetism can work against your will. So sexual power, is it abused or enjoyed, right? You also have the sexting, like people take photos of their boobs and send it to somebody. It's the sexting. So what it does to the brain, and that's very interesting. It deafens the reward circuit, and the porn thing is very destructive for this generation. They're bred on porn. Almost every sexual education that they got was through porn. So it went, I don't know how much of the internet is actually filled with porn, but it's quite a lot. And what it does to the brain is that it creates a sluggish dopamine system. So you will have a lot of porn addicts in this generation. And I can just, there's a great site for that. It's called reuniting.info. And you will get a lot of information on the scientific things that they've been exploring now with this exaggerated ejaculations that are going on. You overly focus on. I mean, it's great that people are exploring the taboos and stuff, and there's a reason for it. But we will also see the diseases of that because it's not healthy to exaggerate. It's not healthy. You get addicted, and that's the desire nature. It's taking over, and it's the brain. Same with food. If we had a circuit of reward that we could sort of, when enough is enough, we would just stop. It's great, but we don't. If we had that, nobody would get fat, right? So and here are my symptoms. This is from a guy who is porn addicted. Tired. Today I slept a lot. Bad flu-like symptoms. My throat aches like crazy. I'm depressive. I see everything in black. It's almost like the worst day of my life. I'm anxious, afraid. My voice is fed up. So it's like the rewards. It's a sluggish dopamine response, and there's this energy that it can create a lot of neurological imbalances in the brain, and eventually also mental diseases and diseases. And I'm not saying that to be a Puritan at all. I'm just saying that because it's really not something you should abuse. And overly focus on sex as well, objectifying women, for instance, that's part of the porn thing as well. And you see, one of the beautiful models that we have on this picture is a part of that stimulus that you need. More needs more. You need more sugar. The brain, if you eat sugar, you need more sugar, right? So but the real Scorpio drug is the oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and of course, we get some bonding hormone when we have regular sex, but after the ejaculation, there's actually a sense of separative energy, you know. That's also been researched lately a lot because we research what happens to the brain during orgasm, but after that, nothing has been done of research. But now they're starting to expand and they're researching what happens to the brain after like 7 days after orgasm. And it seems that the brain goes into a repair mode where it needs to repair itself again. And it's not so interested in its partner anymore. It's called the Coolidge effect. It wants to have a new partner. The only way they get sexually stimulated is and the new partner, potential new partner, and you can only and you start to get irritated with your partner. Uh, why didn't you do that or this and that? You know, you lose the bonding. It's immense bonding right after, but then after a while you lose the bonding. The oxytocin levels they are being they are going down. But if you want to keep the oxytocin high, there are the Taurus polarity point with sensuality and touch, and also now you will see this Pluto and Scorpio generation bringing in the Tantra. I think that's beautiful. They will revolutionize everything because of the destruction that happens. And you have the caressa. The caressa is, caressing. It's just, if you get a hug from somebody and lasts more than 20 seconds, you get a boost of oxytocin. And that's the bonding thing. And just imagine what that would do to our ability to participate in life. We would bond with each other. We would feel safe enough to do that. Instead, we go into the anxiety mode of, all the time neurological imbalances and dopamine running high in the brain, and it actually creates anxiety. So social anxiety and everything, a lot of it can be explained with too frequent ejaculations. I'm not saying don't ejaculate. I mean, for all means, it's the, but exaggerating would only lead to deterioration. We're not wired to do that. And here's a girl who felt like she was being totally objectified by the other sex. I mean, she is, as you can see, she has some relationship karma. She also have with that Saturn Venus here in Capricorn. She also has some boundary issues. No, it's not no. She told me. I can say no. They won't hear it. She was raped 4 times. She does not identify her own sexual urges, and that's her. She's like a little bit Neptunian about it all. Like me, I don't have any. I don't like, as if she pretended she didn't like sex, but she's a Pluto and Scorpio person. I mean, of course, she'd be sending out sexual vibes, and they will, if she doesn't respond to that consciously, other will absolutely do that for her, and she will be um, pulling in people who can prey on her, sort of speaking. I'm not saying she's to blame, not at all, but I'm saying that there's something in her system that she's not consciously responding to. She's not using it well. She has to be more aware. And then she can be more careful. Then she can put down boundaries. Then she would know who to go home with and who to not to go home with. And she would listen to her instinctual response mechanisms instead of going into the Neptunian fog and just go, huh? After a while, yeah. Here's the unapologetic. That was the last tour to Rihanna. Chains and whips excite me. She did the SM thing, and I won't apologize for it, she said. I don't know. I have a on and off relationship with Rihanna. I sort of like her, and then I don't. She's like the best and the worst of that generation. She has a great voice, but I don't know. She's the best and the worst. Rihanna, badass. She has, why does she go so hard against this? I mean, if you look at her chart, you see I've circled in the South Node in Virgo there and the Pluto in the sixth house. She's sort of talking to each other, and the ruler of the South Node is retrograde in Aquarius. And she's trying to get out of her mind, definitely, and get into her emotions. And it's kind of hardcore. And she's trying to break free from a lot of shame. So no wonder she's unapologetic. It's fake it until you make it. She also, yeah, and also, this generation, like she was beaten up by her boyfriend and then took him back. I mean, she could probably on some level in her mind understand why he did it. That's the kind of Piscean mentality, but it's also part of the Pluto in Scorpio, because they can relate to the darkness. They can see, okay, it's dark, I have that in me as well. So from fear to love, I think we started with Adam and Eve, walking in the Garden of Sin. And then we had to go through this in order to get that, in order to get true union. And it's just part of the process. And I think we need to honor that, although we will see a couple of people, uh, there will always be some destruction. And it's important, like one of Hercules' tasks in Hercules' labors, the sex was one of them. We have to go through the suppression, and in order to get to this union, this beautiful Shiva and Shakti union, where the male and the female really bonds. That's where they really, really bond. We have to go through this phase of promiscuity or taboo or whatever it is. We can't stay there. I mean, that's for sure, because it's not healthy. But here we have the union of the male and the female. And the important thing with bonding is, because bonding is not just something you do with anybody. You have to know that the ones that you bond with are actually safe to bond with. And people know that if you first bond with somebody, it's not easy to get out of it again. So there's a lot of drama going on, because you bond with somebody and they bond quite magnetically to each other, and then they realize that this was not just second opinion not so good as first opinion, perhaps, and you get all these sexual imbalances, and you get all kinds of patterns emerging, and then they want to unbond. And that's when jealousy occurs and all these emotional drama staying, and they won't stay in a relationship unless there's growth. You got to take me somewhere. I need to be taken to the next level. If not, not interested. And it's also this push and pull. You want me, but then I won't have you. And I want you, but then you don't want me. So it's a lot of push and pull going on. And powerful friendship. They merge with friendships, and they stay to their tribe. So Pluto moving through the chart, will it be death and destruction or power and regeneration? And I will give you a chart now that is quite interesting, because here we have the polarity point through the ascendant, which is very important. The Sun-Pluto square, and it's in a Gogolin zone, and also the Neptune-Venus in a Gogolin zone, and she has the nodal axis in Libra, Aries, and then she has the Taurus ascendant. And this is a person who's been like having secret addresses, because her boyfriend have been stalking her, and she bonded, and then she unbonded again, and then suddenly she had the most jealous boyfriend. That was her theme, and she was also being abused, and you see this because of her tendency to get into quarrels, very defensive lady here. Moon Mars is sort of explosive, so she'd been into some violent things. One of her boyfriends, she bonded with one, and then when she didn't want him, he killed himself. So this is and look at that Pluto. Where did it go after her birth? It started walking up this way, and it sort of crossed her descendant, and then from here, when she was 16 years old, it all just started to go completely crazy. It was totally, her life story is one of the most intense that I've heard, and she had this power. She bought herself her own apartment. She come from this totally dysfunctional family, and she managed to survive, and she managed to survive so many other things as well. And she all she wanted, she said, was personal freedom. I want space. I want to be self-sufficient so that I can have peace. She also had powerful memories of being a geisha or like a call girl in earlier lives, and this was a very interesting reading, because she was fairly conscious. But there are some themes here that are related to the Pluto in Scorpio, and it's this compulsion and this, she bonded so strongly, and then, oops, I'm Aquarius, I don't want to do this anyway, sorry, and then it's too late. So she had to be more conscious about that, Pluto. Yes, and then we're starting to reach what's part of their sorrows, because what this generation is brought up with is the awareness that everything on earth has a boundary. You know, whenever you buy a luxury item, somebody else has to slave for you in order for you to have that luxury item. But still, you're being brought up to be a good consumer. So it's a very difficult thing. Regeneration. These people will definitely bring forth some ideas for how to regenerate our resources. I expect a lot from them, actually. I remember Maurice once called them the next power generation, and I've been pondering that ever since. You know, Pluto in Leo was the first, and us middle generations, we're just here to fill up everything, and then you have the next power generation, that's the Pluto